Hi all, it's Thursday again, and tonight's date is September the 27th. This is the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams. Enjoy the show. Hi all and welcome to the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams. We have a bit of a show again. Seems every week now there's groundbreaking announcements, and of course I'm going to title this show Wading Through the Bullshittery, because there's an awful lot out there, both on the alternative media platform and certainly on the Portal People platform. Testimonies proving nothing, documents revealing nothing, and it's all distraction. So we'll be covering some of that tonight. We'll have the usual news and views around the world in the first hour. A full description on what is the RV. Yes, our members know it as regurgitated vomit, but some people are unfamiliar with that term, or the real term, or what it entails. So I'll be running through what is or was the RV. We have a bundle of intel that rattles cages, and a number of op-ed pieces to boot. We may have time for Q&A as well. Right, let's get into the details of the show. And if you want to listen live, which is every Thursday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you can listen on Spreaker.com/user/895-5881. You can also listen live on thinkdifferent.thepeoplesclub.org, and that website is expanding rather well now. That's the official website of THI, and it has all the archives of the previous shows, including the must listen to shows, and it's all being very well put together by Michael Jacquin, and it's expanding. It's an interesting site. We have the Facebook page, Truth, Honour and Integrity, and for those of you who don't like Facebook, and that is an increasing number these days, we have the social media alternative called MeWe.com. Again, that's Truth, Honour and Integrity. If you can't find it, send me an email. And this email is also for comments or questions into the show. And that's truth.honor.and.integrity@gmail.com. We have the People's Club website, all about the foundation when the funds are released, and that's at thepeoplesclub.org. Please, for those of you who send in proposals send it to the People's Club, not the Truth, Honour and Integrity at Gmail address, please. And then for those of you who wish to support my work, you can go to patreon.com/TommyW/memberships. Word of warning again, for people who have already donated, the payment will be coming out starting on the 1st. So make sure your bank accounts are stocked, or cancel the membership either way. I don't want people going overdrawn. So it comes out between the 1st and the 4th of every month. Right, I think, that's all the details. Let's get to the news and views. I know some people think this is boring, but you've got to get, there is insight and intel in the first hour as well. I kind of select certain stories, so it also gives insight on an intel basis as well. And the first one, head of the UN body that leads sustainability and green issues, have been criticised for extensive and expensive air travel this week. Another audit has gone ahead. You're going to hear that term audit an awful lot between now and the end of the year, not just the UN. So anyway, a draft internal audit obtained by The Guardian and the BBC says that Eric Solheim's actions risked the reputation of the UN environment. Really? I didn't realise they had one. And the report says he incurred costs of $488,500 while travelling for 429 out of 668 days. And there was, fittingly, and this is a common theme, and also this will be addressed going forward also, there is no oversight or accountability to monitor this type of travel. And Mr. Solheim says he has paid back the money where instances of oversight occurred, and the audit was carried out by the UN's Office of Internal Oversight across the UN environment. And as I said, 58 million was spent on travel in the 2 years up to 2018. $58 million for the UN goons to travel around and threaten people, generally, or steal children or child traffic. And the OIOS points out that the amount of money the UN environment spends on travel essentially doubled over the 3 years between 2014 and 2017. There's your example. That's when they were really cut off from funding. While all UN staff are expected to complete mission reports within 2 weeks of travel, hi Drake, OIOS found that these were often missing, and they were requested reports of 596 trips undertaken by 32 managers and staff. 210 mission reports were not provided, while around another 200 were only completed after the request was made. And the report was severely critical of Mr. Solheim, the UN Environment Executive Director since 2016, and who was a former Norwegian Environment Minister. NATO connected. Mr. Solheim's leave and travel were approved by a member of his office who reported directly to him in contravention of UN rules. Audit and oversight will be the word going forward. Trust me. Oh boy. US Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, TikTok, as mentioned 12 months ago, has denied the report that he discussed invoking a constitutional clause to oust President Donald Trump, and America's second most senior law official said it was inaccurate and factually incorrect. Now, the New York Times, who were citing anonymous sources, also said Mr. Rosenstein had suggested secretly recording Mr. Trump to expose chaos in the White House. Yes, they have been recording. Whether it was Rosenstein is another matter. We'll have more than that in the second hour. But a source tells the BBC that a comment was made sarcastically. No, I won't make that comment. The remarks allegedly happened after Mr. Trump fired the FBI director last year, and James Comey has been overseeing his law enforcement's investigation into alleged ties between the Trump campaign and boring Russia. Mr. Trump referred to the Russian thing when asked why he was removed, and reported that Mr. Rosenstein had discussed recruiting cabinet members to invoke the 25th Amendment of the US Constitution, which provided for the removal of the president if he is deemed unfit for office. It also suggested he's secretly recording Trump to expose turmoil and dysfunction. Yes, you don't have to secretly record that, because it is turmoil and dysfunction. Whilst the Pentagon is sending puppets to the UN to talk about war and sanctions this week, The real issue is why they're not looking after their soldiers and former soldiers. And the number of suicides among younger veterans has increased substantially, according to a new report released yesterday by the Department of Veteran Affairs. Now, the latest statistics show that 45 out of every 100,000 veteran ages between 18 and 34 committed suicide in 2016, up by 12.5%. And these findings underscore the fact that suicide is a national public health issue that affects communities everywhere, the VA said in a statement, and our goal is to prevent suicide among all veterans, even those who do not and may never seek care within the veterans system. The VA found that there were more than 6,000 veteran suicides each year from 2008 through 2016. And veterans accounted for 14% of all suicides in the United States, and yet the veterans comprise of just 8% of the population. Mr. Vogel, focus on that, not sanctions. Iranian leaders have accused US-backed Gulf states of being behind an attack on a military parade this week that killed 25 people, including a child. The leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, said puppets of the US were trying to create insecurity in Iran, and gunmen opened fire at Revolutionary Guard troops and officials in the southwest city of Ahvaz. Earlier, an anti-government Arab group, Ahvaz National Resistance, and ISIS both claimed the attacks. There's those honest criminals again, like that ever happens. How people believe that is beyond me. It's when a criminal admitted that they, I'll rob a bank and I'll call the police and own up to doing it, like it ever happens. Except all these terrorists all admit it. Strange. However, neither group provided any evidence to show that they were involved. Earlier, Foreign Minister Javed Zarif blamed terrorists paid by a foreign regime, adding that Iran holds regional terror sponsors and their US masters accountable. Iran has summoned diplomats from the UK, the Netherlands, Holland and Denmark, accusing their countries of harbouring Iranian opposition groups. And he went on to say it's not acceptable that these groups are not listed as terrorist organisations by the European Union as long as they have not carried out a terrorist attack in Europe. And this was said by the Foreign Ministry spokesman Bahram Khuzemi. Reports say nearly half of those killed were members of the Revolutionary Guard who are under Mr. Khamenei's command. White helmets involved in that. That name will come up later on in the Q&A. Switzerland. I wish they'd do more than just do this. There's a cancer on your soil called the Rothschilds. Be nice if you removed them. Anyway, they're going to the polls on Sunday in not one but two votes, which campaigners say will promote ethical and sustainable food. Now, the votes follow scandals in the last few years over horse meat in lasagna and the destruction of the rainforest to make way for palm oil and cattle ranching. And they reflect a growing consumer interest not just in Switzerland but across Europe, where food comes from and also how it's produced. Now, Switzerland's system of direct democracy means campaigners simply have to gather 100,000 signatures to ensure a nationwide vote on a political issue. Yes, we had that here, except he ignored it. Yes, you, Obama, clothhead. And the first proposal, called Fair Food, wants more government support for sustainable, animal-friendly products and more detailed labelling so consumers know what they are actually buying. It's also called for a crackdown on food waste and for imports to meet Swiss standards on worker conditions, environmental safety and also animal welfare. Now, this would mean Swiss inspectors checking foreign food producers for compliance, and the second call for food sovereignty goes even further, calling for much greater support for local family farms or higher tariffs on food imports, and for foreign produce that does not meet Swiss standards to be banned. Many Swiss farmers support the proposals. Sounds interesting. Another one bites the dust. This time a Kenyan governor, Mr. Obado, was being charged in court this week with aiding and abetting the brutal murder of his ex-girlfriend and who was a pregnant student. The married governor pleaded not guilty to the charge, and his arrest followed weeks of public anger after the body of Sharon Otinio, who was 26, was found in a forest. A post-mortem revealed she had possibly been raped and stabbed in the neck 8 times, and also the abdomen and the back. She lost her unborn child during the attack. Mr. Obado, the governor of Migori County, has been remanded in custody pending the outcome of his bail application next Tuesday. They'll all get in court. This is something I came across which could well be interesting. It also has dangers with transhumanist, and there must be a boundary set. But 3 patients. See, this is another item where people think technology is all the future. It's not. I keep telling you, it's all the past, long past. And these 3 patients were all paralysed from the waist down and have been able to walk again after having an electrical patch fitted to their spinal cords. Well, experts say the device, which is placed below the injury, helps lost signals from the brain reach the leg muscles. US research teams at the University of Louisville and the Mayo Clinic report the success in the Nature Medicine and the New England Journal of Medicine magazine this week. Now, one of the recipients says her life has been transformed by the technology. A lady by the name, or young girl by the name of Kelly Thomas from Florida, is one of the 2 patients at the University of Louisville who's been helped by this particular development, which has been combined with months of intensive rehabilitation therapy. She said, being a participant in this study has truly changed my life, and it's provided me with a hope that I didn't think was possible after my car accident. And the first day I took steps on my own was an emotional milestone in my recovery that I'll never forget. As 1 minute I was walking with the trainer's assistants, and while they stopped, I continued to walk on my own. It's amazing what the human body can accomplish with help from research and technology. Absolutely, and we wish those 3 well. And that type of development and research should be heavily funded, and not the weaponised funding and research. China has sent a hospital ship, thankfully, and is now docked in Venezuela, where for the next week it will provide free healthcare to local patients. And Venezuela's defense minister, Mr. Lopez, went to the port of La Guaira to welcome the Chinese crew. He said the Peace Ark's visit was agreed by the president, Nicolas Maduro, during a visit to Beijing last week. Venezuela agreed at the time to increase its exports of oil, bacteria poop, to China, which is one of its main creditors. Now, Venezuela's economic crisis has led to severe food shortages and medicines and the collapse of public services. But the opposition says the presence of a Chinese hospital ship in Venezuela shows the extent of the humanitarian crisis. And Mr. Lopez thanked China for the gesture of friendship and said that both countries would benefit. It's a pleasure to have this ship in Venezuela, which has arrived here after travelling to more than 40 countries, he said. This is how true diplomacy is done, with concrete cooperative actions. One hopes it's not just about oil and people start doing it without bargaining for oil or bargaining for this. But it's a nice gesture nonetheless. Pakistan's leader, Imran Khan, warned India that his offer of friendship should not be seen as weakness, while urging India to abandon arrogance to enable peace talks. The Prime Minister of Pakistan made a comment in response to what he branded India's arrogant decision on Friday to cancel a meeting between the country's foreign ministers in New York on the sidelines of the up-and-coming United Nations General Assembly. And he said, I hope the Indian leadership will shun arrogance and hold peace talks with Pakistan. During Mr. Khan's visit of the eastern Pakistani city of Lahore. India last week agreed to a meeting with Pakistan in the US capital after Khan wrote a letter to his Indian counterpart Narendra Modi to ask him to resume talks for some stability in the region. The Indian government U-turned on its decision on Friday over what it said was the brutal killing of 3 policemen in Kashmir at the hands of Hizbul Mujahideen militants. Indian Ministry of External Affairs said the killing, as well as the distribution of postage stamps purportedly glorifying terrorism, show the evil agenda of Pakistan and the true face of its PM, according to the spokesman Ravish Kumar. For those that don't know what the real issue is with India and Pakistan, is it's been going on many years, and the region known as Kashmir, which was a song by Led Zeppelin, with the line, "We are a traveller of both time and space." The real reason for the fight over Kashmir is so the order can keep that region free of both country peoples, so it can protect the reptilian base hidden in those mountains. Meanwhile, the people of India and Pakistan suffer violence over some nonsense that has no bearing to any of the countries or its people. Russia's decision to deliver S-300 air defence systems to Syria will face Israel's counteraction and might be used against the Jewish state as a pretext for receiving more advanced weapons from the United States, experts said on Monday. Earlier in the day, Russian Defence Minister Sergei Shoigu announced measures on increasing security of Russian servicemen in response to the crash of the Russian Tu-20 military aircraft in Syria, which Russia believes Israel was responsible for. Now, according to the minister, Russia would equip the Syrian Air Defence Forces command posts with automatic control systems which had been previously possessed only by Russia. They will send JAM satellite navigation, onboard radars and communication systems of combat aviation attacking Syrian targets, and most importantly, supply the S-300 air defence system to Syria. Now, announcing the deliveries of the Russian air defense systems, they indicated that Russia did initially suspend the shipments of S-300 systems to Syria at Israel's request in 2013, but stressed that since that situation has changed, and not through the fault of Russia. The United States will, this announcement from NASA, never a straight answer, and perhaps it really should be termed SSA. But their comments this week is that the United States, which has nothing to do with America, and neither is NASA for that matter, will work with Russia to maintain cooperation in space programs and keep joint exploration efforts separate from the terrestrial tensions between Washington and Moscow. NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine, oh dear, every time, isn't it? Told guests at the Space Business Roundtable on Monday, we've been able to make sure that space is set apart from all of these sometimes terrestrial challenges we have with our international partners, especially Russia. Bridenstine said, so it's my intent to keep that relationship strong. Really, that may be your intent, Mr. Bridenstine. It's not ours. What we need with the NASA is them shut down altogether and repurposed for the new space program being implemented by the current government. And what we also need is full government transparency on all levels in both countries that JFK and Mr. Brezhnev signed on January the 11th, 1963. What we don't need is more SS small p games. Notice they distinguished between space and terrestrial. Very cleverly worded and not lost on me either. These people are a breakaway group who think they're above and beyond the rest of humanity and have obtained technology through rogue purposes and selling humanity out to rogue ETs and rogue NTs, non-terrestrial. Now, the government's involved, or the governments get involved in the space program, what would happen is all the levels of secrecy documents that are currently above the president by about 26 levels would have to be declassified. I would suggest Mr. Putin and Mr. Trump get together and sign that again and shut these goons down. Where are we next? The height of staggering hypocrisy comes next. An organisation of Mormon women formed in response to President Trump's election is calling for the 4 Mormon members of the Senate Judiciary Committee to pause hearings for Supreme Court nominee Judge Brett M. Kavanaugh until the claims of 2 women alleging sexual misconduct can be investigated. Mormon Women for Ethical Government, issued a statement on Monday to the committee, and in particular it said, to the 4 members who share our faith as members of the Church of the Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, GOP Senator Orrin G. Hatch, Mike Lee of Utah, Jeff Flake of Arizona, and Mike Crapo of Idaho Given the seriousness of the allegations levied against Judge Kavanaugh, the group's statement read, "A thorough independent investigation must be conducted to ensure that these charges be taken seriously and that every attempt to be made to ascertain the truth of the situation. Our mutual faith teaches that any sexual abuse or assault in any context is contemptible and worthy of the most severe condemnation." Oh my word. The staggering hypocrisy of that region and that group. Mormons complaining of others committing sex acts. You have no idea. For those that don't know, the Mormon group are known for child sexual acts, swapping of each other's children for sexual acts, and general debauchery. Multiple partners is the way of life of many of the Mormons. And those who come into the community who are not Mormons must abide by those rules, according to the few people that I've spoken to personally who had Mormon partners. Those of you with long memories will remember the guy called Bill Brockerbader, who was on the Kerry Cassidy show around 9 or 10 years ago. He's a Mormon and was sentenced for sleeping with his niece, who was aged 12 or 16. It was not clear which. But it became apparent that this was the accepted norm in that community. Unless, of course, you pissed off the authorities. Then they used it against you. So for me, the Mormon community needs to clean up their own act before criticising or chiming in on any other alleged crime of others. Salt Lake City is an epidemic of it. So they need to clean their own house before they start chiming in on what others are doing. Here's an interesting story about bacteria poop. And the world's biggest oil and gas companies have made an unprecedented vow this week to cut their contributions to global warming, even as they warned of a potential backlash and pushing change too quickly. The collection of 13 energy harvesters, luminaires, same thing, including the heads of BP, Royal Dutch Shell, all gathered in New York on Monday to acknowledge the need to reduce the planet's reliance on bacteria poop. Not fossil fuel. It's not fossil fuels. It's bacteria poop. But they said a long road lies ahead that's filled with political and technological challenges, really, and insisted petroleum will remain a key source of fuel for a growing population. But it did say the product portfolio will have to evolve, and I think we have a role in making that evolution, according to the Shell chief executive, Ben van Beurden, and he added, all these things we cannot do by forcing it down people's throats, really. And in the end, it's the consumer that has to decide. Well, the consumers decided we don't want bacteria poop a long time ago, and we're still waiting. Anyway, after years of negotiations, American oil majors Exxon, Chevron, and also Occidental Petroleum Corporation agreed to join last week. And the company's president on Monday announced a collective pledge to cut the rate of heat-trapping methane pollution from their operations by 1/5 in the next 7 years, a move that would reduce overall emissions by 350,000 tonnes per year. And the 13 businesses have also created a $1.3 billion investment fund to seed startups that are aiming to cut emissions from vehicles, oil wells, concrete production, and other top sources of so-called greenhouse gases. Interesting move. Are times changing? Oh, we for time. Two more, and then we'll go into a break. What are we going to play? Let's go with that. Right. This goes on what I mentioned last week about the transphobic and all the other nonsense. Last week it was in Sweden. This week it's in my home birth town in Liverpool. On a billboard poster bearing the Google definition of the word woman has been removed after it was accused of being part of a transphobic campaign. Kelly J. Keane Minchell told the BBC she paid £700, which is about $1,000, to have woman, women, noun, adult, female put up. But it was removed after an LGBT activist complained Ms. Minchell's campaign represented a hate group. So women are now hate groups. Ms. Minchell denied the allegation but said the idea that trans women were women was preposterous. And when asked why the poster was erected in Liverpool, where the Labour Party annual conference has taken place, she said it was in response to the City Mayor Joe Anderson, who recently voiced his support for the trans community. Now, Dr. Adrian Harrop, whose complaint led to the poster's removal, said the billboard was a symbol that makes transgender people feel unsafe. Really? So a 30-foot by 20-foot piece of paper with words on makes somebody feel unsafe. This is getting beyond the joke now. It really is. Way beyond it. You know, people can call themselves whatever they like, but please leave the public and their funds out of it. You have no idea. I've worked in social services. Vast amounts of public funds and resources are being wasted on these labelled groups, whether it's lesbian, gay, transsexual, women, black, you name it. And for what purpose? Divide and conquer. Pure and simple. That's the top and bottom line of it. I nearly got fired for asking, where is the group for white heterosexual males? When I was in the UK back in the 90s. And it was suggested that I was being racist and sexist. And my reply was, well, if you leave a group of people out, isn't that racist and sexist? And I told them, you people need to stop enforcing this shit and need to wake up. What was taking place is 2 days each month for every lesbian, gay and transsexual women and blacks, as they were called back there, including the Chinese, which really got them upset being labelled black, to attend meetings for their specific groups. So, for instance, if you are a lesbian, women and black, you got 6 days a month off. And yet, no meetings for whites, no meetings for males, unless you were gay, and no meetings for heterosexuals. You just can't make this shit up. Well, they did, and we fell for it. It's all divide and conquer. And that's what happens when you start labelling and making people different from others. So now you've got people calling women campaigners a hate group. It boggles the mind. US President Donald Trump, this is the final news item before we go into a music break and some intel. Mr. Trump has urged other members of the UN Security Council to work with America to ensure Iran never acquires a nuclear bomb. He was chairing a council meeting this week, and he said anyone who failed to comply with the US sanctions would face severe consequences. America is reimposing sanctions after pulling out of the international deal on Iran's nuclear program. Iran hit back by accusing Mr. Trump of abusing the Security Council. I told you it was wading through bullshittery, didn't I? It's just unreal. So French President Emmanuel Macron, who still backs the 2015 deal, called for a long-term strategy. You won't be around long enough to see it, mate. Perhaps Mr. Trump needs to pay more attention to this show rather than SS small p generals and their war mentality. We have warned. Iran already has nuclear weapons from as far back as 1984. We have the documented proof to show it, when Israel sold them nuclear weapons to Iran. Oops. Iran also has F-14s and went on to develop their own after USA sold 18 F-14s to them, also in the 1980s. So you see, where money is concerned, it doesn't really matter, does it? We'll sell them to everyone, and then further down the line we'll call that country a problem. And this is how the order and how they plan to use countries as political footballs at various stages. So everyone hates or fears on that country. It doesn't matter, does it? These people will sell to both sides of the so-called divide. There is no divide. The reality is no countries are at war with each other. None. And all countries are being used in a massive divide and conquer tactic, and it's time more leaders get a grasp on that. Like India and Pakistan fighting over Kashmir. It's all fake. All to protect the reptilian base over there. It's all an illusion. Now, regarding the UN Convention, perhaps I'm not thinking straight these days, but I thought that the UN Convention was about world leaders engaging each other. Kim said I was rather silly thinking that. Being sarcastic. But clearly not, as up stepped General Vogel, there's those names again, from the Pentagon war machine and stepped onto the podium. But since when has the Pentagon become a world leader? Think SSP. So should we be worried about all these nuclear issues? Maybe you remember this bit. Well, you're all going to die. No, we're not. For anyone worried about nuclear war, forget it. The final codes for launch is held within the trust, and Kim will not be giving them out, ever. Let's have a music break and we'll be back with more. Hi all and welcome back to the second hour. That last one was for the RV people. Tomorrow never comes. It's a bit like 2 weeks, really, isn't it? Even a broken clock is right twice a day. So there seems to be a lot of people asking what is the RV? Well, we kind of nicknamed it regurgitated vomit, which is about all it's useful for. And so I thought I would write a piece up and relay it on the show of a description of what the RV is about. I know it's not a travelling caravan. It's more serious than that. So what is the RV? Well, the RV was designed as a collection of currencies that were collected around the world, most of them stolen loot out of invaded countries or printed out by the Rothschilds' owned printing company called De La Rue, that would essentially be revalued at X times the current valuation, and other currencies would be devalued at X times the current rate. For example, if the RV had any validity and actually went ahead, the talk was the dollar would be devalued between 50 and 80%. Some are saying higher. Zims, dongs and dinars, which are held in vast quantities by the cabal, after they looted those countries, was increased by 3 to 10 times their current value. Like that's going to happen. Now, most top military, mercenary groups, so-called terrorist groups, politicians and media giants were paid in dinars, not dollars, on the promise each note would pay out 3 to 10 times its current value, and so making them all multi-millionaires overnight. This is what is stopping the authorities moving, as they all want their payouts. Except nobody appears to have got through their single brain cell thinking and told them, A, it's not happening, and B, you've been duped, and C, the current banking system cannot handle an influx of that kind and would totally collapse all banks globally within 5 minutes of it being banked. That's microeconomics, never mind macro. Wells the Fargo. Now, to pull off the RV, it requires a down payment that is larger than all the money ever spent by everyone in the last 500 years or more. And assets to back it would require a number of Earths, not just this one, to support it. Now ask yourself, is that scenario eminently possible? This is the stark reality of what people are promoting on the internet. So what are the RV goals? Listen carefully. The RV goal and the plan was to eliminate America as the major role player. And this started back in the 70s. And the goal, and it still is to financially cripple this country. Weaken and then eliminate the dollar, so it has a value of pesos. Remove the guns from the people. Declare many people terrorists and load them into FEMA camps and reduce 85% of other countries who are also trading with the dollar into oblivion. Why do you think the US military sold all their equipment to the Asian faction and are now leasing it back? For those that are new, I mean every single military plane, ship, weapon or missile belonging to the United States Inc. military, and again for those who are new, our current military does not belong to America, does not operate for and by America either. It is a Rothschilds and Jesuit puppet. with a heavy leaning to the Zionists thrown in. So how was it done? Well, the Rothschilds and the minions emptied all the American and government bank accounts, ably supported by the Federal Reserve, and there has been no money to run this country since November of 2016. They've been selling off stuff and getting the DOD credit vouchers since to continue to operate until Kim stepped in March. All of that military hardware was paid for by the people and was sold to the Asian faction, all of it. Now work is still underway to get it all back. The RV was a bank, corporate and cabal bailout to kickstart not humanitarian programs, that's the illusion, but to kickstart the 90% humanity genocide programs. Pure and simple. And anyone who thinks different at this stage, with all the information that is available, is either beyond stupid or bordering on retarded. A Rothschild's agent or a cabal puppet. There is no other category. So take your pick. The RV was a harvesting program. Again, pure and simple. But people fell for it for seducement purposes, a promise of free money, and we've all fell for that at some stage, particularly in times of economic downturn. But it's short-term gain and long-term pain. And what is required now for the first time ever is short-term pain and long-term gain. Enough of the seducements, false promises of RVs, prosperity packages, ET packages, NESARA, GESARA, OPPT, birth certificate payouts. It was all an illusion, designed to string us all along whilst they continued to rape and pillage us. Now, due to the trust, their ability to do any of the above has been drastically reduced and is now edging towards being eliminated altogether. That is, or now was, the RV. If you continue to support it, you are supporting your own genocide. Pure and simple. You have people like Foster and Gamble, Bloodline Families, Jared Rand of the Rand Corporation. That's one of the hidden corporations, a bit like Serco, no one ever hears of, that wields massive power. David Rothschild, talking about humanitarian issues. These people are not interested in humanitarian issues whatsoever. These same people all had control of their accounts for at least the last 500 years. Did they give a single cent to we the people? No. So what makes you think they're going to do any of it now by launching some fake RV? Get real, people. Get real. The intel. UN threats. Oh boy. Oh boy, were they threatening? Were being issued to virtually every government official within the UN Assembly, including Mr. Trump. Now, it was not unexpected by many of the attendees, and that, to me, is a sign of progress. Why? As they know who the real enemy is now. It's all in your face. And it makes all the vast quantity of time Kim and the team have put in to teach those people of what's really going on this planet. Most couldn't believe it at first. and now they do. Those who rejected us last year are now returning and want to work with us, as finally they've seen it all for themselves. Even Langley too, and their merry band of miscreants on the alternative media have been contacting us in the past week or so. Tide's turning. Intel 2. One extremely high level and prominent government employee has been charged with possible high level treason and is currently walking round with an ankle bracelet. One suspects it will become very clear who that is, though there was references in last week's show. But in the coming days it will become obvious. And no, it's not Rod Rosenstein. That's an extra issue. Item 3. The defunct Federal Reserve raised rates yesterday in an attempt to crash the market by 500 points today. The cabal had put options on it, dropping, and were ready to cash in. And it was designed to increase panic on the banks and lead to chaos next week with the budget looming. Now, we have warned often enough, these clowns are here to financially assassinate this country, and actions must be swift and brutal to deal with the problem. There is no more warnings, as there is no more time. The people in authority, you either go forward with pay, with the solutions provided, or react with no pay and watch the country and its people suffer. You will be held accountable. Now, I can say that their plan failed. Another one that failed today. And time for Trump et al. To deal with the Fed once and for all and its tax collection subsidiary known as the IRS. Now, given the Fed has no license after it was revoked by Kim, and yet still they play public games by increasing rates to get money for their fraudulent scumbags on the Wall Street, we are looking into a plan until they are shut down permanently of every time they raise rates to the public. We will raise the Federal Reserve interest rates by treble or more on the debt they are owed to the trust. Have a nice day, Feds. Next item. The OCC, Office of the Comptroller of Currency, is now investigating all banks as the fraud and corruption can no longer be hidden, and it will be dealt with accordingly. Expect to see some actions in the coming week. Next item. Norfolk, Virginia cabal crew, ran by the SSP, have been accessing all the Treasury files and accounts and has been transferring the data over to the Chinese elements. They've been caught. All the security codes and the security policies are now being rewritten to prevent that happening again. Norfolk, Virginia cabal crew were one of the ones who tried to hack the trust a few weeks back. They need to be dealt with. Now this week, all these next three stories are all linked. The next intel item, Trump blamed China for interfering with the up-and-coming elections. I will repeat now, that should not be taken literally. It has nothing to do with China the country, its people, or the government, and everything to do with Chinese, so-called Chinese elders, Rothschildians, and the dragon groups, who are employing an army of hackers out of Asia to hack into everything, ably supported by the Norfolk, Virginia crew, and not just the trust either. And here is why. Kim was going over the trust and the quantum system, as there's been various technological issues that needed to be corrected, and many of them have. And it's not necessarily all to do about banking or releasing the funds. It goes way, way deeper than that. And many of those issues we haven't covered in the show for safety purposes and ongoing security issues. Now, one thing that came up was security certificates. Now, these are in your phones. You go in settings, I can't remember the next one after that. You will see a whole plethora of security certificates. Japanese government, Turkish government, Holland government, UN, the N-Trust, EN Trust group, which is ran by Hillary Clinton. You'll find there's at least 6 on your phone. Now, most people are familiar with the term VeriSign or VeriSign for credit or debit card transactions. They're all over your phone as well. If you've got a Samsung phone, you are monitored by the Japanese government. Now, these security certificates are in all phones, all computers, all laptops, all iPads, all cars, planes, boats, trains, anything that has a motherboard or a chip. You know, the staggering thing about it is that the governments, the agencies, the military and the Pentagon departments or the Treasury departments were completely unaware of the problem. Staggering lack of oversight. Now, the central system of the old system, which I won't mention where it is because it's ongoing, had 47 connections, which we suspect were 13 bloodline families, 13 covens, 13 parents, and the 8 special parents equaling 47. And from then, there was another branch, and then another branch, and then another branch, and then you would get into the more familiar names or corporations or state departments or agencies. All of it siphoning every scrap of data on everybody globally. And what Kim's done is removed certain levels and scrambled or deleted all the data. It's not required, it's not necessary that people have that level of data on people, and it's been deleted. But you're telling me that the governments and the agencies and the military and the Pentagon and the Treasury had no idea that every single one of them, including the White House, was being recorded for data. You want to know why the electric cars are crashing? Because of the security certificates in the chips. So they can crash all the electric cars, so the public are mistrusting of them, and they carry on with their bacteria poop, 100 years outdated technology called oil. You want to know how planes fall out of the sky? There's your answer. Security certificates loaded into the motherboard or the chip. And yet all the top departments had no idea. This is what we're dealing with. So as you can see, the trust is not all about funding. All the funds that have gone into those organisations, and they had no idea it was going on all these years. All those security certificates will be deleted, because they will not be able to access the current system. Their key won't work. That was a kind of concerning item. Let's lighten it up a bit. Several dozen countries have now approached the trust for us to work with them directly and solely, as they have a desire to end the old banking system and the humanity terrorising groups like the UN, the IMF and the World Bank, plus the Rothschilds conglomerate. They now see a new way to be and are actually acting on it, and the pace of change is now quickening. Now, there is word on the street and back chatter that October the 3rd will be the new D-Day. What that entails at this point in time, we're unsure, but we'll see what unfolds. Last item, I think we'll have a music break after this before we go into op-ed pieces. Let's go with that. The American government has approached the trust, and this has been going on for the last few weeks now, and we've had long discussions and meetings about it, about how to address the income tax issue, about changing our whole tax structure so that only Social Security and the spending taxes will be in place soon. Now, current ongoing meetings is being done to see the best way to carry this operation out. But the first thing that will take place is the IRS will be moved out of Puerto Rico and back into America, and it will be repurposed altogether. The ongoing discussions are involving eliminating income taxes completely and a 10% spending tax to be introduced across the board. It was hoped that we could eliminate taxes on food, but it didn't meet the financial criteria that fitted into the best structure. So everyone will be paying 10% tax, but none of it will be coming out of your wages. We are also working on a plan to restructure, not mortgages yet, certain loans which may be acquired and refinanced at a much reduced rate than what you're currently paying. And we're also working on a possibility of drastic reduction or total elimination of student loan debts. When we have more details that come out, we will release it. But that has been what we've been working on for the past few weeks now. So to recap, the IRS will be moved out of Puerto Rico as a foreign entity and installed as an American company that will not be collecting income taxes on behalf of the Federal Reserve. There will be no income tax should it all be approved, and there will be a 10% spending tax. Now, the Trust believes America will be completely self-sustaining, with no other foreign bodies or corporations having any say or control over the financial aspects within the next 3 to 5 years. What it means by that is the taxes that are collected will be sufficient to pay the American budget without the interaction with the Trust. The Trust will support it in that time period, but within 3 to 5 years, the taxes collected will make America self-sustaining. No more Crown, no more Fed, and no more IRS collecting income taxes is the end goal to those discussions. All of that at the request of the current government. Perhaps this song fits well. Bring it on. Hi all and welcome back. Well, I hope you liked that last bit. I thought you might. But for those of you questioning the 10% spending tax, there's currently 6 to 20% depending on where you live in America. Sales tax, that replaces that as well. So it's not that much difference. But there's a big difference not paying income tax. Alright, where are we going next? Some op-ed pieces. Another fun bit. The issue of where people's energy goes will be important now and going forward, and you should use yours wisely. Now, many people focus on the drama of the political circles, and I do get that, but to me that is old news. It's like a 4-year loop. Look at the drama of McCabe, Rosenstein, Mueller, Comey et al. And look at how long that investigation charade has taken. How many hours of energy everyone has put into that. Thousands of hours of portal people rhetoric, well over $100 million poured into it to find out what we in THI already knew before it started. Think about it. Yes, I will get proven right on many things that have been said. But it's not about me being right in the scheme of things. It's about the world being righted. And politics is a tiny aspect of that in the scheme of things. Far tinier than most people imagine. And this is why I feel we need a new type of government. Now, I'm not calling for a government overthrow, I'm calling for a restructuring of it. We've had 18 months of toing and froing theatrical style bullshittery that has helped no one, least of all the people. And it's clear the current government mode of operation is incapable of making any rational, well-reasoned, common-sense decisions on behalf of we the people. It's just not designed that way. It's all controlled from way higher up than the president, and people really need to understand that. Like I said, this movement's not about ending the government or one particular party. It's about stripping away the barriers preventing the government operating in a way of, for and by the people. And all of you have a responsibility and a duty to participate in that. It's your life that they are wrecking, your children's futures that they are destroying, and our species' chances of ever progressing beyond this meat suit limitation mind control program. It's fine to a point of following it to understand what has been done. But all who have listened to THI from the beginning by now should be fully averse of the machinations of government. So FISA documents or other documents telling you what you already know serves no purpose for us whatsoever. You already know most, if not all, are corrupt or corrupted. So what difference will another document make? How much proof do you really need? It's just proof on top of proof on top of proof on top of more proof. And all of it is delaying tactics. And that's why I called out Q last week. I read out the list of TikTok names on a show over 12 months ago. And it's nice in a small way seeing them all ticked off that list. But overall, it's not getting to the root of the problem, is it? It's scratching at the surface over a ridiculously prolonged period of time. We and they have enough proof on all of them. Kim has provided millions of pages of documents on all levels of corruption. You don't need investigations. You already have the evidence. And now's the time to act on it. Your energy needs to go into actions, not finding proof on top of proof on top of proof of what we already know. So whilst all are distracted on political theatre, people don't do the real work on themselves and will always seek out the distractions, be it politics, sport or religion. All of it designed to deflect away from what is real. I hope people begin to grasp that by now. Like I've said, no one's coming to save you. Be it Trump, governments, ETs, Jesus or Allah. Only you save you, and hopefully you save others as well. Look at the Kavanaugh. Well, I haven't seen a single second of it, because he could have forecast how it all panned out. Stupid bitch today says after the traumatic event, she called her friend on her cell. There was no cell phones then. These people are beyond stupid. And yeah, we fall for it. governments and their ideologies and philosophies and whatnot. And of course this country is riddled with a fear of a single word that the majority have no idea what it means. Communism. Communism. And political and social scientists, communism, which comes from the Latin communis and means common and universal, and is the philosophical, social, political and economic ideology and movement whose ultimate goal is the establishment of a communist society, a common universal society. Does that sound wrong to you? Which is a socio-economic order structured upon the common ownership of the means of production and the absence of social classes, money and the state. Again, does that sound something bad to you? It includes a variety of schools of thought, which broadly includes Marxism and anarchism. Find out the real definition of anarchy. Again, it's not what you think it is. Now, all of these share the analysis that the current order of society stems from its economic system, which is capitalism, and that in this system there are two major social classes that conflict between two classes of the root of all the problems in society. And that this situation will ultimately be resolved through a social revolution. Well, Russia had its revolution, except it wasn't done by the Russian people, was it? As his story told us. Now, the two classes are the working class, who must work to survive and make up the majority within society, and the capitalist class, a minority who derive profit from employing the working class through private ownership by means of production. Now, according to the revolution, it will put the working class in power and turn established social ownership of the means of production, which according to this analysis is the primary element in the transformation of society towards communism. Common, universal. Universal means all-inclusive. That doesn't mean hierarchy, does it? Now, critics of communism can roughly be divided into those concerning themselves with the practical aspects of the 20th century communist states, except they're not communist states, they are a political ideology done by the Khazarians in both Russia and China. Nothing to do with the Russians or the Chinese. It was implemented. Now, the term communism was first coined and defined in its modern definition by the French philosopher and writer Victor Duhupay, D''Hupay, in his 1777 book, Project du Commute Philosophy. He pushes the philosophy of the Enlightenment to principles which he lived up to during most of his life. Enlightenment, common, universal. Now, that book can be seen as the cornerstone of the communist philosophy, and he defines his lifestyle as a commune and advises to share all economic and material products between inhabitants of the commune so that all may benefit from everybody's work. That's the original definition of communism. Again, I'll ask, does that sound bad to you? Now, communist thought has also been traced back to the works in the 16th century, and the English writer Thomas More, in his treatise Utopia, written in 1516, More portrayed a society based on a common ownership of property. The people owned it, whose rulers administered it through the application of reason. You do all realise that the current mode of communism was introduced by the Khazarian Jews, not Russia, not China. And if you don't understand or know that, listen to my series From Russia with Love Part 1 and 2. It details it all, and you will gain a greater perspective on it all. Now, some will say fascism is the worst form of government, but it depends on who is designated for extermination, doesn't it? To a fascist, they're fine, they think it's great, which is why you had Nazis. Now, in reality, fascism is a speedy death program, whilst all other government ideologies are a slow death program. Communism, or as I would like to change it to communalism, is all about we the people, all about working and sharing things. No social classes, no hierarchy, no cabal, no 1%, no anyone thinking they're above anybody else, and a community all chipping in. Does that sound bad to you? That's the real definition of communism, and why it's been denigrated like the Rus and the Slavonic Aryan people into worse than a 4-letter word. This is how they play the game. And it's only when you take the time to go and look at it for yourself, what it really means, then suddenly it all makes sense. For the last 60 years, Americans have been brought up to hate communism and Russia. But they've never attacked, have they? All those funds wasted on the so-called fake Cold War. Because that's all it was. Fake. All an illusion that the two countries were at war with each other. Complete illusion. When you had the earlier story about NASA were working with the Russians, or the fact that Five Eyes CIA has been working with the KGB for the last 70 years, and also Mossad. But the countries take the flak. One day we'll all realise it's nothing to do with the countries and everything to do with political ideology and control systems. They just use certain countries as the political football at various timelines. So hating on Russians and hating on the Chinese people and hating on Iraqi people or Muslim people or hating on British people because of the British Empire. We the people should be hating on no one except the common enemy, the ones who hide behind the scenes and pull the strings. Theresa May, there's another bit of word magic, says this week that the cabinet is behind the Brexit plan. How clever is a piece of wooden furniture that understands Brexit? It even understands the stalling tactics of political bullshittery. So what is a cabinet? Well, a secret storehouse, a treasure chamber, or a case for valuables. But it comes from the Latin term cavea, a stall, a stoop, a cage, and a den for animals. Kind of fitting, don't you think? Like I said, back on election night for Brexit, you'll be 2 years plus on and nothing will have been achieved. Here we are, 2.5 years on? And they just pull up one item. It's like the budget bill in America. They'll put one controversial item that no side of the opposition is going to ever agree to, and it stalls everything else. So the latest is we need to section off Northern and Southern Ireland. What a load of nonsense that is. You have to understand how they work and how they think, or how they are told to work and told to think. Final op-ed piece, we have one more near the end. What is sovereignty? And what would it bring to America? And every other country for that matter. Well, what it would bring is an end to the Federal Reserve and the IRS. Work is already underway. What it will also bring is an end to the 3-letter, 4-letter and 5-letter groups' oversight or lack of oversight. It will bring reduced taxes. It will return the organic American Constitution. We are not under it. We have never been under it since 1871. The Bill of Rights. It will also end the bar system law, legalese, and a return to natural or common law, whichever way you want to call it. It will also allow, for the first time since 1871, a real American government. The one we have now is a corporation acting as a government with 19 services farmed out, all operating under the British Crown, not the Queen of England, the British Crown. We will have a right to not only own but print our own currency out of the Treasury. Not Federal Reserve, not Rothschilds, De La Rue companies. We will also have the right to keep our own resources, in-ground resources, and not have it sold off to Russia, China and everywhere else like Hillary Clinton had already signed off on in the September before the election, which she thought she was going to win. That ended that nonsense. Under sovereignty, wars would cease and we the people funding it. Everything and everyone will be accountable. We will have financial transparency. No more too big to fail. No more immunity laws. No more people thinking they're above the law. And for the first time in American history, America will have independence. Not the fake July the 4th, which is another ritual day. It will bring an end to the deep state It will bring an end to the SS small p. And disclosures will be abound, but not necessarily to do with ET or religion. That will be at a later date. It's far too sensitive and far too damaging. Sovereignty will bring funding for projects and humanitarian issues, as they will no longer be blocked. It will bring an end to the banking tyranny, and an end of sacrificing sons and daughters via military, and the beginning of the end of the old technology like oil, nuclear, gas or coal, and the phasing in of new, cleaner technology. It will bring in advancements in medical fields, a return to entrepreneurs with the fresh ideas, and driven hopefully in improving humanity and not just their bank balance. An end of the core pirate control. An end of GMOs, chemtrails, water poisoning, nutrient and vitamin deficient food, and an end of the criminal dumbing down done to our children in schools. It will bring an end to the vaccine issue. It will be the beginning of the end of psychopaths running the world. So when you ask what sovereignty means, there's your answer. Except I left out one key component. You. Sovereignty means you have a personal responsibility for the first time in most of your lives to not only participate in improving your world, but everyone else's as well. That is sovereignty. Everyone chipping in to improve all aspects of life, and everyone's workload will increase exponentially. We have much to clean up, improve, or completely delete. But the improving of ourselves and the clean-up of ourselves is probably the most essential part. Everything else, nothing else matters. Hi all and welcome back. Interesting reactions on the earlier Intel item about raising taxes and potentially student loans. And some people always tend to go, what about my situation? And I get that. My own personal financial situation has not been great for a number of years. But this is about the all. You're forgetting that a removal of federal taxes itself will save you money on your insurance, car, van, boat and house. They all have federal taxes. It will also remove the taxes on your phone, landline and cable. So you will have extra money no matter what you're on. So that in essence, has gone down in price, hasn't it? Not up, down. People need to look at their utility bills. In fact, all the bills you pay, all have got written into it federal taxes, which everyone pays. Everyone pretty much has cable, phones, home insurance, car insurance, boat insurance. They've all got federal taxes on. And if I'm not mistaken, there's federal taxes on the property taxes also. So you will save money on that as well. So that is a price reduction. There will be other things that are thought of where the savings that are made by slimming down of vast duplicate programs within the government organisations will likely be funneled into pensions, disability, welfare for people who can't work. So it's no longer a case of existing or just getting by or not getting by. The funds can be repurposed into all about the people, which is what the trust and the team are all about. No one will lose out. Some will gain more than others, but it won't be the top end, will it? Like I said, this is about us all, not about individual items. Well, what about me? I do this, or what about me? I do that. Overall, everyone will gain a vast amount out of it. And what you're forgetting is money is the last of concerns. As Kim said today, she could give somebody struggling $1 billion and then lock them up in a cage for the rest of their life. But they can't spend it. What use was that money? Or you can give people a small amount and remove all the cages altogether. Which person gained the most? And that's the way all people need to start thinking. Let's go into some Q&A and then we'll finish off with one more piece near the end. Oh dear, it's 4-year leap time. Here's the first question. What's your opinion of Karen Hudes? Do I say the polite version or the impolite version? Now, she claims to be working on the financial reset and not one of those who are talking about the RV or Jassara. She has never mentioned Kim or your name on her weekly videos. Do you think she's legit? She strongly claims that Donald Trump is not the legitimate president because the Constitution is not in effect and keeps on bashing him and his policies. The last portion is correct. He's not the legitimate American government president. He's president or CEO of USA Inc. currently. So that part is correct. She's also correct about the Constitution. The idea that Karen Hudes is working on any financial reset is absurd. Or Anna von Reitz. I liken the two of them to Statler and Waldorf this week, bickering away on the balcony, achieving nothing. Karen Hudes, despite her lying, blatant lying, because I have the emails proving it, has continued to work on behalf of the World Bank, who are, to all intents and purposes, now declared as a financial terrorist organisation, along with the IMF and the UN. And no, she won't be mentioning Kim. But she knows the actions that Kim and the Trust and the team took has virtually eliminated the World Bank as a financial organisation. That's why she won't mention us. Hugh, this is irrelevant. What names did the Universal Council call our Earth School? With the first thought of the day being for our future, it doesn't seem appropriate that the younger generation can come up with a different name than the older names like Midgard. Would like to speak it before heading out of here. It's known as Midgard, it always has been. Earth is the name of a body that has inhabitants. There are many, many Earths in this galaxy and beyond. So Earth is not the correct term. Midgard was the name of this term. Now the Galactics call this planet Sol 3 as well. Sol, the Sun, and this is the third planet along Sol 3. But Midgard seems far more appropriate than some of the other names that are bandied about, Gaia and etc. So perhaps it should stick with that. But Earth means inhabited planet. Will the US ISIS false flag attack on Syria of the chemical weapons be allowed? No, the last one wasn't allowed either, and it didn't go ahead, and it was all staged and fake. All of it. If it's allowed, will it be considered an act of war by the Universal Peace Treaty and punished as such? Yes. How quickly is the biggest issue currently. The proposal that Kim made to the people or organisations of loans to finance an interest rate of 0 or close to 0 and preferred to take the credit of a bank at interest, I don't know how much, just incredible right now with the offer that Kim makes again to the banks to be refloated, proposing $10 for each dollar. How can they still be thinking about it? Well, of course the banks don't want the trust or a future trust created bank creating interest rates below theirs because they'll go out of business. But if they're going to continue to overcharge interest rates that are not required, then we should have competition. And I'm sure a lot of people will be interested in the trust, refinance and loans at a drastically reduced rate. 1, 2, 3, 4 or even 5%. 5% not necessarily for mortgages, I'm talking about credit cards. It's far cheaper than the 11 to 29% they're currently trotting out using our own money. So there is a possibility, it's another aspect that we're working on, where we refinance everything from 0 to 5%. It's people's money, isn't it? So why not reduce it? So the $10 for $1 is because the Rothschilds threatened to pull out all their corporations like Exxon Mobil, Chevron, Johnson & Johnson, to name but a few, out of the banks so they could collapse the banks who were willing to work with the trust. So Kim decided to offer them $10 for every $1 they removed. How can they still be thinking about it? Because they're being threatened or stupid or part of the game. That's why I think all CEOs need to be fired in the banks, all of them. They're either corrupt, corrupted, or beyond stupid, and shouldn't be in those positions. And maybe with the intel of the OCC investigating all the banks, maybe that be one of the moves that they make. Starting with Wells Fargo, followed by Citibank, followed by JP Morgan, followed by Bank of America. So that's how they're all still waiting. What can you tell us about secret science? Which part? You have to be a bit more specific over that question. I could come on forever with that one. Except to say most of our science is utter bullshittery, to be quite honest. Deliberately so we don't understand it, and evades the issue that we had technology thousands of years ago on this planet, some of which certain ones have got hold of, some of which has now been sequestered and put back in safe places by a team not so far from here. So they can't play games anymore with the artifacts, and eventually it will trickle out, the secret science or the real science, with no limitation, because science is all about limitation currently. It doesn't allow for any expansion of ideas or knowledge, and quickly gets shut down. What you've got to remember is a lot of science is funded by grants from the Ford Corporation and other Carnegies and other rogue foundations from the past, Rockefeller, Smithsonian, and anyone stepping out of the line and putting forward any ideas, like the German physicist who was a pharmacist, may have been pharmacist, who invented the cure for cancer in 1927, which then the American government and other governments declared it illegal to find cures for cancer under the Cancer Act 1939, if memory serves me correct. So as you can see, science is all about limitation. Laptops, physics. Laptops were being used with Wi-Fi connections in the Malaysian jungle in the 1970s. And if was it the Charlie Chaplin video with the old lady or man in a woman's coat was walking around on a mobile phone in the 1920s? So science is a complete and utter lie to most of us. What is the situation with the South African government and the land grab or China loan of 33 billion rand? That's more, again, nothing to do with the government and everything to do with the Rothschilds telling the government, you do this or we will do that. It will get resolved. Many of the African countries are now seeing the light. Many of them. And South Africa may or not be on that in that light tunnel. We'll have more on that later. Not today, a later show. Do you have any knowledge of the remaining debris from the two destroyed moons you told in the From Russia with Love show are located on this planet? If so, which are the specific mountains or craters that is left on the two moons? Well, the the moon that broke up and crashed, that sank the continent of the Arya, which is north of Russia, 110,000 years ago, obviously disintegrated, but it also was condensed and made the planet bigger. Now the other one was completely destroyed. Yes, there may have been fire raining down and whatnot, but the other moon was completely destroyed, but did not, heavy chunks did not impact this planet at that time, and we were left with one. But 110,000 years ago we had 3 moons. Is CERN a sovereign entity or semi-sovereign even? No. Not whatsoever. CERN is also defunct and has been since August of 2015, which is why you've heard little or nothing about it, even from the fear porn clowns. It was ended August 2015, for its real purpose anyway. Will Americans really take a stance against Russia in the Syrian standoff? No. Trump promised to withdraw from Syria. Yes, he did. But unfortunately, there's SSP general plans still dictating foreign policy. That has to be stopped. Why does he threaten the Syrians and Russian military with actions in Idlib, and now in the case of the installations of the S-300 defence system? Same thing. It's not Trump. It's the goons telling him what to say. The threats that are ongoing are off the charts. There was an incident that we haven't got further details, but Trump had to walk out of the UN Security Council yesterday that he was chairing and leave very quickly. So there was obviously another issue that was, or threat that was going on then as well, which is at least the 4th, possibly more, in the last 2 months. Is Putin really working for the good cause, or is he just part of another faction fighting for power with the others? Partially correct and partially not. Or the partially not remains to be seen. Putin, in my opinion, should have acted in his own country more, never mind in others. There's still elements within his own country that need to be addressed, and quickly. When you look up the word sovereign, you see a few definitions. Well, I think the previous op-ed I did will give you the idea of what sovereignty is. If Kim is the sole sovereign, no, she's not the sole sovereign, she's the master sovereign at this point. And how does that make it different from you and me? It doesn't make it any different. It's only if you apply, oh, look at me, I'm the master sovereign and you're all below me, that it makes a difference. The reality is, Kim's not like that. She doesn't think she's any better than I, or any of the listeners. We both share that same ideology. You can be, I think it's far more important that you're doing important things than being important. Mr. Trump thinks he's important. I want to see him do important things. That's the difference. The ego all comes down to the ego. And neither Kim nor I have unbalanced egos. So it doesn't make any difference as a person than you or I. But what it does make a difference is allows her to operate in a field that many of us can't get anywhere near, the inner control system, and wreak havoc. And that's what she and the team have done. And we can all thank our lucky stars, because if Kim was rogue, we'd all be doomed now. If Trump acts on the sovereign declaration provided by Kim and the Trust, what does that mean? Well, like I said, I think I answered all that previously. Is there an agenda to awaken the masses of ignorant, brainwashed sheeple? Yes, it's been ongoing for the last 15, 20 years, and still they sit there. I'm not trying to create animosity towards them, but I firmly believe that everyone knew what I know the world would revolutionise right now. They already do. They chose to ignore it. Sorry. There is no conspiracy anymore. Most people are familiar with ETs. Maybe not physically, in most cases. But we've been told about ETs for the last 30, 40 years. And yet does everyone believe in them? No. People in the truth community told everyone years ago that all politicians are corrupt or corrupted. It's not a conspiracy no more, is it? We mentioned about the pedophile issue. We mentioned about the corruption and pedophile and trafficking in the churches, including the so-called highest church in Rome. It's not a conspiracy no more, is it? It's all out in the open. We mentioned about the financial fraud of banks, corporations, military and government entities with the Department of Defence siphoning money out into black projects. Again, it's not a conspiracy anymore, is it? And still they sit there. And yet they have the audacity to call us nuts. We've been proven right along the way. We'll be proven even more as time goes on. And still they sit there. Like I said, maybe the theory, and it is a theory at this point, maybe they're all synths. Maybe the real organic souls, the 10 to 15%, have all woken up. This is why we're seeing the changes. And why we're seeing them lose it completely. Why? Because their world no longer makes sense. Never made sense to us, or most of us at various stages of our lives, however long it took for you to wake up to reality. Some of us was practically from birth or a young child. Some were a bit older before they woke up. Well, it's all in your face. You can't get more in your face. It's like people asking for ET disclosure. You've already had it. How much, like I said earlier, it's proof on top of proof on top of proof on top of proof. How much more proof do you want before you accept reality? And yet people automatically believe in 2,000-year-old books. Strange world. So by planned agenda, I mean genuine mass disclosure of the truth. You've already had it. All of us have. Like alien tech that can save lives. That's being controlled and held back by the SSP. Yes, Corey and his goons. Or are the elites planning fake controlled disclosure with extra taxes to pay for fake nonsense like Space Force, whilst funneling other money to the real SSP? No, there won't be money funneled to any SSP at all. The Space Force will not take anywhere near as much funds as people think. There's an awful lot of advanced craft. Some of you call them UFOs. Not all house extraterrestrials. Brexit, my vote was against the New World Order, and so it's obvious the UK is being run by Freemasons. Is this going to change, or will it just be more BS and lies and no change to the New World Order European Union running the show here in the UK? I would suspect, I hate to tell you this, but after the collapse, and it's gaining pace rapidly now, that Europe will probably be the last zone. Why? Because that's where it came from. Remember, United States, it means the Congress of Vienna and Europe. That's where the term came from. You've had a United States of Europe since the 1500s. They just transported it to America. It's all an illusion. The United States has got nothing to do with America, and you've got millions of Americans chanting USA, USA. The cabal are laughing at us because of our ignorance. And I know it will take time and habits, as we all, even I say United States sometimes. Old habits die hard, but people really need to understand what United States means. We covered it in the show about a month ago, I think. And the New World Order, European Union and Britain voting out of the EU is the biggest laugh no more. Britain is the EU. It's the financial centre. Everything's run by finances, which is why we attacked the Bank of England and made them pay back debts, called them in, sent some bonds attributed to them to Citibank and a number of other banks, where they started calling them in. And the Bank of England said, we haven't got that money. Oops. What will be the content of President Trump's emergency message on October the 3rd? We'll see. We'll see. It could get interesting, may not be. On Monday, October the 1st, will the US shut down? Possible. Could a shutdown also be an opportunity in disguise to kick off events originally mentioned on the 6th of September show? Possible. Time will tell. Is the Mannanan planet in Star Wars with 3 A's a reference to the actual Kingdom of Mana that was here on Earth? I don't think so, no. The Kingdom of Mana was in the northeast section of Iran, the land of the Aryans. That's the terminology for Iran. I'm new to your show, but trying to quickly catch up. I wrote a food and housing project 5 years ago, inspired by a dream I had, but hadn't turned it into anyone for funding. I've always felt I would understand where to submit it when the time is right. I'm in Canada. Any suggestions? Keep hold of it for now, because we're kind of busy, but once the funding, then send it to the People's Club. We may have to set something up for Canada. Whilst the People's Club is essentially for America, it may get extra funding to accommodate for Canada as well. So we're already spoken to the Irish people, Alan and Steve, about them running a People's Club with funding from the Trust in Ireland. So we could expand it out. Is there anything we can do to help Kim and the team during the internal struggle? Yes, keep getting the message out. Keep working on yourself, keep improving, and look after each other. It's not a lot to ask. Doesn't require a lot. What is the true purpose of all the FEMA camps? I covered that in the regurgitated vomit piece. In the movie Jupiter Ascending, there's a scene in which a spacecraft is diving into the atmosphere of Jupiter. A little later, a sort of huge space station appears. Is there any reality to this? There was, but it was removed back in 2013, 2014 time. How much tech shown in the TV series Star Trek and Stargate is currently in use by several groups such as the SSP? Well, Gene Roddenberry was briefed by a certain extraterrestrial group, and that's where he got a lot of the ideas for Star Trek. As for Stargate, I don't know who wrote that or what, but I do know Gene Roddenberry, like Steven Spielberg, who was also briefed, which is why I end up with Close Encounters in the series Taken. All very symbolic, that series. If you've never watched it, the series Taken by Steven Spielberg. When the abductions happen, the circus and the clowns turn up. Oh my. For those of you who can do astral travel, you'll know exactly what I mean. Does service to others have to be non-paying? Not really, no. Service to others doesn't really include money, or it can. You know, caring and sharing, loving one another, caring for one another, doesn't always require money. In fact, most times it doesn't. Having compassion for others, that doesn't cost any money. So, no, it doesn't. Why would Brussels name a square in their country after the murdered British MP Joe Cox? What's that all about? Well, we covered that in a previous show. Joe Cox is not all it's made out to be. She's got links with Hillary, and her foundation is or was supporting the White Helmets in Syria. Hope that answers your question. Do we have anything to worry about with Israel? Been reading a lot here about how much they have to do with the internet, and is the quantum system made by Kim have anything to do with Israel's help? Do we have anything to worry about Israel? The country itself, no. The people, some of them. The political ideology behind that country, which is not a real country, it never existed. Yes, they're a major concern. The Zionists, the same Khazarians that caused havoc, and has done for thousands of years, which is why that group of people have been thrown out of 109 countries in the last 2,000 years. Everywhere they went, society was ruined. You want the biggest example? Look what happened to Russia in 1919 and the Zionists. Yes, they have security certificates on the internet everywhere. They have the Stuxnet virus, which was used on Fukushima, which was a two-pronged attack because Japan wouldn't launder money, and also they were enriching uranium beneath the so-called fire whilst it was going on to make bombs. You won't have heard that one before. Well, you've heard it now. So all that BS about fallout, they were enriching uranium below the tubes and the fire whilst it was all going on to make bombs. Is the quantum system made by Kim have anything to do with Israel's help over my dead body and hers? Like I said, unfortunately the Jewish people have been used as pawns, told they're the chosen ones, set them up to fail really. But as for the Zionists, those people are utter psychopaths that are blight on humanity and have been for thousands of years, which is why the Urs and the Aryans tried to help them. I've made a number of references tonight to do with that. I encourage, if you're new and you want an understanding of all that, go and watch, or listen to rather, the From Russia with Love series, part 1 and 2. You'll have a greater understanding of what's gone on in this world after you've heard that. It covers many, many items. Sure, I've answered this about 3 times. What is the significance of the US moving their embassy to Jerusalem to block off the Rothschilds? Nothing more, nothing less. Right, that's the last of the questions, I think. Or a couple of more. Imagine if a group of friendly ETs were to engage in slow flybys. Yeah. Over densely populated spots for a week or a month, so everyone seen it or genuine footage of it. I seem to remember them doing that in Phoenix. Does it make a difference? No. It would be like flying a banner that said your leaders are liars and you can stop listening to all their bullshit now. Stop fighting each other over lies, choose better leaders and heal your human race because you were all sick and your earth is dying. I tend to agree with that statement. Earth's not dying, the people are. Rather than waiting for people to wake up whilst we all circle the toilet of doom, I think it's time to set the alarm clock for the awakening. The awakening's been going on a long time. a long, long time. Right, that's enough of that final piece. Something that came up in the chat this week about the issue of leaders and followers. And it's something I felt we should touch on to a wider audience. Now, some don't like the term followers, but right throughout history there has always been followers. The tribal groups had a chief, the original tribal groups, or a leader, and his or her object was to develop and empower their people and create new leaders for the progression of the group. Now, currently, all leaders disempower their group, and so everything is ass backwards. Now, the largest empire ever on this planet was not done by conquest, but by teaching, and that was the Urs, Rus, Slavonic, Aryan Empire, what is now known as Russia, that encompassed 2/3 of Europe, China, parts of India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran, which is known as the land of the Aryans, and Iraq, with all countries in between. All of it was done by teaching people to think, act and operate in a better way in alignment with all, and not replicate the savagery exhibited by those out of the original Garden of Eden, which was in India, of human sacrifice and worship in the dark forces entity known as the Kali Ma, the Dark Mother. All of those people followed the path laid out, and it was bringing peace to the planet. So there's nothing wrong with following as such. Not all can be leaders. And isn't not the case when there is too many leaders, it often leads to squabbling over who is the most important. The being known as Jesus, whose real name was Radomir. He was a Rus. All the same teachings as the books attributed to the name Jesus. But it said, "Don't follow me," did it not? And what he's referring to by me is, you are not following the person, but the teachings are the important aspect. Big difference. That's the empowering aspect. What is not empowering is people saying they are following Jesus the man. I hear people say, "I'm good as I follow Jesus and I read all his books." Except A, Jesus never wrote any books, and there was no letter J until the 1400s. And B, if Jesus wrote the Texas Chainsaw Massacre book, would you all become homicidal maniacs? So it's not about who wrote or who was quoted in the books, but how you choose to go on a certain path. It has nothing to do with Jesus and everything to do with you. I've said it about myself in this show, and the same applies. I showed people a path of betterment and truth in many aspects of life. But the fact that you chose to walk it is all down to you, not me. It's like people saying, "I go to church and my church does good things." No! The people in the church does the good things, actually. All about the people, not about the books or the buildings. And this is where humanity fails. all tributes are being given out as external to themselves, when it is they who are doing the good actions. Please stop doing that, as you're giving away your energy and your life force to entities and buildings that operate on that premise. Pray within, not to external cloud-sitting judgment man. No. Source created you. You are Source. Source is within you, not external. Wishing and hoping is external. Manifest and creating starts internal. Do you think Trump started the truth and exposing movement? Did he? Heck. You did. All of you. When a threshold of around 10 to 12% is reached of what is requested, it manifests. You all demanded the truth, and so now you are getting it. So once you all realise the fact that little you or little me is far more powerful than you've ever given yourselves credit for, is it not time you use that power in a non-violent, non-destructive, more productive manner? It's time the higher universal man, aka human, is kicked into gear, is it not? This has been the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name is Thomas Williams. Bye for now.